Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Story Hour. I'm your host, Daniel Marcus. My fabulous co-host is Laura Blackwell, and we are really happy to bring you the closing Story Hour in Spooky Month. We have a great program for you tonight. We're delighted to have Nadia Bulkin and Belanger to share their work with us. Um, so we've been doing this, Laura and I, for nearly 5 years, every Wednesday, the exception of the Wednesday between Christmas and New Year's. Um, and it's been pretty remarkable. I started Story Hour very early in the pandemic because things were kind of scary and weird. We were living in the science fictional future that we've all read and written about for many years. And shortly after I kicked it off, I asked my friend Laura Blackwell to join me as co-host. And so together, you know, rain or shine, come what may, we have been at it, bringing folks from pretty much every corner of the incredibly broad tent that is speculative fiction, pretty much every subgenre imaginable, and new writers, veteran writers, everything in between. So it's really been phenomenal. The way it works is really simple. Humans have been telling each other lies for many, many, many millennia, and Story Hour continues that tradition. Every Wednesday, we have two writers sharing their work, telling lies, as I like to call it, or the truth inside the lie that is fiction. And about a half an hour a person, and that's it. Super simple. So before we proceed, I'd like to thank SIFWA for yet another year giving us a giver's grant, which allows us to pay hosting fees and stuff like that. So thank you, SIFWA. We're going to start the program tonight with Belanger. Is an author, occult expert, and popular presenter whose work has been featured on TV shows including Annie's Paranormal State and Travel Channel's Portals to Hell. Happy Halloween. Popular titles include The Dictionary of Demons, The Psychic Energy Codex, and The Ghost Hunter Survival Guide. To learn more, you can visit Michelle Belanger, BELANGER.com, where you'll find signed books, online classes, contemplation cards, and much more. You can support M's work and get access to more and in-depth resources at patreon.com/haunted or michellebelanger.com/member. M, welcome back, and the floor is yours.
All right. Always fun. I'm going to dive right in. There's one cover warning. There are two very brief references to an off-camera suicide. So if that is not okay for you, this is one to maybe skip. Otherwise, it is just full 1990s goth nostalgia. First and last and always. Kai parked their mother's ancient station wagon 3 blocks further from the club than he liked, but this was the best they would get on a Saturday night. His chunky platform boots could handle the walk, but he worried about Maisie's choice in shoes. The pointy-toed stilettos she'd borrowed from his old collection had upside-down metal crosses instead of proper heels. They looked wicked cool, but Kai knew from experience they were hell to walk in. Maisie flipped down the passenger seat's visor, fussing with her makeup. Elaborate Susie Sue eyes blinked back from the tiny mirror. Maisie loved the look, could hardly believe it was her. She could be anyone under that mask of stark white and black, and the possibilities thrilled her. Gently, Kai nudged his sister's hand before she could smear his best work. You look great. Stop. What if they don't let me in? Just flash the old ID I loaned you and no one will care, he said. You're trying to pass for 18, not 21, and we used to look enough alike, it'll be a breeze. Maisie twisted the chain of her coffin purse. Won't it be weird, two of the same person coming in at once? My name's different now, Kai reminded. No one will notice. But what if they do? You're 16, don't act like you're 12, Kai chided. You walk in like it's just another night. It's a goth club, not Fort Knox. Even under all the black lipstick, Kai recognized Maisie's pout. You can stay here if you want. He pocketed the keys, smoothed his binder, then got out of the car. Oh, no, you don't, Maisie cried. She teetered coltishly on her heels as she rushed to catch up. Kai strode easily along, hands shoved in the roomy pockets of his bondage pants. Chains and straps swung in time with each step, bumping his legs in a soft, familiar rhythm. Once she caught up, Maisie reached for his hand, but instead he looped his arm around her thin shoulders, pulling her close. Don't be nervous, Maisie Daisy. I got you. Promise? Even from a block away, he could hear the pulse of the club, crackling bass, shrieking guitars, muffled vocals. Maisie was going to love this. What are big brothers for? Maisie almost choked when the doorman took her ID. Jennifer? He asked. Yep. She struggled not to bite her thickly painted lips. Kai's old name. Did her brother twitch? Did the bouncer guy notice? Her heart thudded in her throat, a rapid counterpoint to the pulsing music of the club. Hands, the bouncer said. Maisie's two wide eyes flew to Kai. Was she in trouble? Just hold out your hands, palm down. It's fine, her brother soothed. The doorman, a massive guy with a shiny bald head and shinier studs gleaming from his eyebrow, ears, and nose, took a fat Sharpie and drew two big X's on Maisie's hands. Thanks. Bored, he handed the ID back and waved her along. Maisie goggled at her newly minted letters. Kai clasped her by the elbow and ushered her past the check-in before others in line could jostle too much. What are these? She asked. Take a breath. You're hyperventilating. I'm not. Why do I get X's? You got a wristband. I can drink. You can't. Simple as that. Wait, I can't even buy a Coke? She didn't mean to want. Too old for that, but she was thirsty already. Alcohol, silly. Anyone can buy soft drinks. Kai tugged her toward an archway leading to the rest of the club. Come on. Beyond the arch, the club surged with dancing bodies, pounding music, flashing lights, a wild alien landscape comprised of chain link partitions, cracked mirrors, and dusty black velvet, all softened by a constant drifting haze of smoke. Oh, wow. Maisie immediately felt lame for saying it, but Kai was too excited to notice. He propelled them toward the dance floor. This is the best song, he said. Maisie balked. I don't know how to dance like that. Kai laughed, not mocking. Joy lit every feature. None of us know how to dance, Maisie. That's the beauty of it. Just do what you do. No one will make fun of you here. Kai's old shoes pinched her feet, but she forgot all about that once they waded into the sea of swaying bodies. The music wrapped around her, a living thing vibrating in her guts. Maisie didn't know the song, but she recognized the band from Kai's many mixtapes, Sisters of Mercy. Beside her, Kai bounced with wild abandon, his big Frankenstein boots beating a fierce rhythm against the worn tiles. A second song came on, slower this time. The whole crowd shifted in unison. Eyes shut, Kai raised his arms along with countless others, rocking to the melody. He breathed the lyrics like a prayer. Maisie had never seen her brother so comfortable in his own skin. She tried to keep up, but the metal heel of one shoe tilted in a seam between tiles, and she pitched sideways. Immediately, a hand caught her elbow. You okay? A spindly man gripped her. He towered over both Maisie and her brother. Thick eyeliner accented startling gold eyes. His chest was bare under a fishnet shirt, dark nipples pierced with steel barbells. The strobing lights etched every line of his abdominal muscles. Sorry, Maisie mouthed, not trusting her voice to carry over the tidal swell of the music. It's all good. His hand lingered only long enough for her to regain her footing. Then he was gone, slipping back into the throng like a wraith. Maisie felt a flush hit her cheeks and was happy for the sheltering layers of makeup. After 3 consecutive songs, the siblings swept from the dance floor. Breathless and sweating, Kai headed for the bar. You want a Coke? Maisie nodded. Once you have it, don't let go of your cup, Kai cautioned. First rule of club life, control your drink. If you put it down or walk away even for a second, throw it out. Why? Maisie ventured. Some people suck. They chose a table sheltered from the dance floor so they wouldn't have to shout. They settled into an easy silence, watching the club bustle around them. Now and then, Kai would point out his friends, giving their name and an abbreviated history. Do you know everyone here? Maisie ventured. Just about. She looked for the skinny guy in the fishnet shirt. There were several, but finally she spied the one who'd helped her. He swayed by himself at the far edge of the dance floor. Who's that? That's Ogre, remember? Old school punk? No, the guy next to him, really tall. I don't see who you're talking about. He'd already faded into the crowd. Never mind. Her brother knew something was up, but before he could press for answers, she pointed at his drink. What'd you pick? Gin and tonic? Can I try it? Just a sip. He passed her his cup. Only a swallow remained at the bottom. Maisie touched it to her lips, then sputtered. Oh, God, why does it taste like pine cleaner? It does not. Kai drained the rest. Okay, maybe it does a little. Darling, you should give her something sweeter, a new voice cut in. An elegant figure approached, balanced perfectly on 5-inch stacked heels. She wore a dress like vampira's, daggered edges trailing from cuff and hem. She'd been one of the first Kai had pointed out by name. Torvalia, Maisie said. The other's delicately painted brows climbed with pleasant surprise. Someone's been filling you in. Kai got up and pulled a seat out for his friend. Torvalia made a production of sweeping her web-like skirts around her knees as she settled onto the cracked upholstery. At last, your storied little sister, she said. Do you have fangs? Maisie gasped. Proudly, Torvalia smiled, pink tongue touching the tip of first one and then the other pointed canine. Only the best. That's so cool. Are they real? As real as I want them to be, Torvalia replied. I think I want to be you when I grow up. Torvalia's smile widened. You really are as sweet as your brother says. A new song transitioned over the sound system, and both Kai and Torvalia's heads perked up. Is that? They haven't played this in weeks, she replied. What? Maisie asked. Bela Lugosi's dead, Kai said. Is it okay if I sit this one out? Maisie asked. Kai looked torn, but people were already flooding the dance floor. Torvalia gestured elegantly in the direction. Mustn't tarry. Okay, sure, Kai said, but just remember, control your drink. I don't want anyone creeping on my sister. The tables emptied and the dance floor filled up. Maisie crunched ice from her Coke, feeling awkward. She didn't recognize the song and couldn't see how anyone could dance to its droning rhythm. And it just kept going. After waiting 5 full minutes for the song to end, Maisie pitched what was left of her Coke and went to find the bathrooms. They were downstairs in a dank basement. Giger-esque murals covered the walls, all black and silver. The stalls were a horror show. The only thing left to wipe with were paper towels. She washed her hands and fled. She bumped into Fishnet Guy, literally, as she exited the bathrooms. Hey, he said. Oh, sorry, He held up a hand. It's cool. Silence between them. Then, so I got this band. There's a release party later. Want to come? He offered a Xerox flyer. Her mouth dried up. What would Kai say? Would he even let her? Mutely, she took the quarter page of paper. See you there. Then he was gone. Upstairs, the song was finally over. Kai and Torvalia lounged at their table. Her brother's face shone with exertion. Idly, he picked at his damp hair, pulling it back into spikes. Where'd you go? Bathroom? Maisie reclaimed her chair. Oh, I should have warned you, Torvalia said. Always take a napkin from the bar. I used paper towels. You're lucky it's early. Yuck. Maisie held the flyer in her lap, picking at a creased corner. What's that? Kai asked. There's some band party? She placed the flyer between them. With long crimson nails, Torvalia plucked it from the table. Crux Ansata. I think I've heard of them. Didn't they open for Black Tape for a Blue Girl last year? That was Dark Theater, Kai answered, from Chicago. Maybe, Tavalia allowed. Could be fun, though. Can we go, Kai, please? Maisie tried not to sound whiny and failed. Let me think about it, Kai said. Well, I'm going, Travalia announced. She handed Kai the flyer. If you decide to show, you can meet me there. Kai didn't take much convincing. He never wanted her to know it, but he couldn't deny his little sister anything. He knew what their mother could be like and still felt a little guilty for leaving Maisie behind to go to college. Not that their mother was bad, she was just absent. Like this weekend. They could stay out till Sunday night and mom wouldn't even notice. She probably wouldn't be home herself till sometime after work on Monday. Keep an eye out for the house numbers. I don't know this part of Lakewood. Maisie clutched the flyer like a talisman. She pointed at a 2-story craftsman with a sagging porch and narrow driveway. There it is. Cars lined the street from crossroads to corner. Let me find parking for this boat. They ended up walking. The sidewalks were cracked and uneven, so Kai held out his arm for Maisie. These were not the best shoes to walk in, she admitted. I used to bring little flats in my purse when I wore them. That's such a good idea, Maisie said. Then, do you miss it? He was surprised she had the courage to ask, but also relieved. They hadn't really talked about it since he came back from college and told her she had a brother. Not one bit. Maisie laced her fingers in his hand and squeezed. Good, because I really like having a big brother. Plus, I get all your clothes. I see. You only love me for my wardrobe, he joked and turned away before she could catch the shine of tears in his eyes. The closer they got to the party, the less certain Kai felt about bringing Maisie. The place was packed. People spilled onto the porches. Everyone was drinking. Around back, someone loudly vomited. You sure about this? We could stop at Denny's instead, get mozzarella sticks, maybe some French silk pie. Maisie hesitated at the mouth of the driveway. Then she spied a familiar figure leaning against the railing of the upstairs porch. Slender chest, fishnet shirt, wild shock of dark hair. He saw her too, lifted his chin and beckoned her toward the house. Can we stay just a few minutes? Maisie, I don't recognize any of these people. Please? Kai relented. There were so many partygoers crammed into the little house, you could taste their sweat on the air. They stood shoulder to shoulder, red Solo cups in one hand, lit cloves in the other, all of them oblivious to anything but their own shouted conversations. Music competed from at least 3 different sound systems. From the racket of guitars and squealing speakers the band was setting up in the basement. Kai muscled his way through the front room, a tight grip on Maisie as she squeezed close behind. His sister looked like her head was on a swivel. He mistook her searching expression for panic. We can go anytime. He yelled it twice till she could hear. No, I'm good. Maybe upstairs? Even with his platform boots, Kai had a tough time seeing over the crowd. He started moving toward where he thought a staircase might be when a familiar voice cut through the din. Kai, over here. Travalia tottered on a chair, waving to get their attention. Oh, Travalia, thank God I know someone here. Maisie saw the stairs and tugged in their direction, but Kai cut a path directly for his friend. I've found a little haven, Travalia announced as they drew closer. It's a room full of serpents. She led them to a small room toward the back of the house. Glass terrariums lined the walls, heat lamps warming coiled inhabitants. Kai counted at least a dozen snakes, some of them as long as both his arms outstretched. Wow. The tight confines of the reptile room dissuaded the other partygoers, or maybe it was the snakes. Either way, they had the space to themselves. Kai leaned near the door jamb and sagged with relief. This place is bonkers, he said. And hot, Travalia dabbed her makeup with a lace handkerchief. I didn't expect it to be so crowded. Even in her heels, Maisie was too short to see past the wall of people. She went up on tiptoes, searching for her new friend. Where'd you get the flyer for this thing anyway? Kai asked. Someone at the club, she answered vaguely. Where was he? Did he know she was down here? He had he had to still be upstairs. Then she spotted him eeling through the crowd, tall, graceful, radiant. Everyone parted around him, like they knew. Here was someone special. He locked eyes with Maisie and held out his hand. All the lights went out. Kai and Torvalia stood in sudden, crushing darkness. What the hell? Kai choked. They blew the fuse box. Why's no one talking, though? The narrow room filled with the pop of grit underneath their shifting boots and the sound of rapid breathing, their own. I've got a light on my keychain. Torvalia opened her purse with a snap, waking uncertain echoes in the stifling silence. Maisie, you all right? Kai reached for where he remembered his sister standing. She wasn't there. Maisie? His carefully trained voice jumped a register. Maisie! No answer. Torvalia flipped on her light. No, she breathed. No, no, no. They stood on the ground floor of an abandoned house, burnt timbers angled around them. Kai recoiled. What the hell? What happened here? He shouted, Maisie! I remember now, Torvalia murmured in a trance. I remember where I heard the name of that band before. No, Torv, where's Maisie? He shook his friend, fighting to snap her out of it. The shaft of the little light careened wildly through the blackened wreckage. Otherwise, she stood unmoved. The night of their release party, she continued, there was a house fire. The band was in the basement. Only the lead singer made it out alive. Where the fuck is my sister? He came back a week later and hung himself upstairs. From the floor above them, they heard Maisie scream. This can't be happening. This can't be happening. Kai recited it till his brain turned off. He became a thing of meat and sinew, pumping legs and pounding heart. With Torvalia's keychain light bouncing weakly from behind, he tore through the acrid wreckage of the house. The stairs. Get to the stairs, then get to his sister. Get to his sister, then get out. Kai, slow down, Torvalia called. He leapt up the treacherous staircase 2 at a time. With a sickening crack, one of the steps split beneath his boot and his foot crashed through. He sank to the knee, splinters shredding his calf through the pants leg. Snarling, he ripped himself free, heedless of the blood that flowed. Maisie! Upstairs, moonlight filtered through skeletonized rafters. Whole sections of floor had collapsed in the narrow hall. Kai bounded across, chasing the cries of his sister. A room at the end of the hall. The door sagged open. That had to be it. A young man's bedroom lay beyond, wrecked like the rest of the house. 3 guitars, irretrievably broken, nestled in a rack beside a shattered bed. Charred band posters, worn to anonymity, hung in tattered strips from the walls. In the center, arms outstretched in a parody of crucifixion, a spectral figure glowed. Maisie hung in the air before him, suspended impossibly a foot off the floor. Moonbeam bright ribbons of force twisted around her, and a gout of light poured from her throat. The ghastly figure drank that brilliance, his own mouth a gaping pit. Kai, no thoughts, no words, cannoned toward his sister. Torvalia reached the doorway just as Kai crashed headfirst into Maisie. The siblings tangled briefly in thieving strands of ghost light. With a shriek of desperation, Kai ripped his sister free. Maisie crumpled to the floor. Kicking furiously, Kai dangled in his sister's place. The ghost keened with unslaked hunger, locking his mouth across Kai's own. As the two twisted together, Torvalia dashed into the room. She bent to the guitar stand. The shattered neck of an old Les Paul had the right heft and sharpness. She pulled it free. Gripping the neck of the guitar like a baseball bat, Torvalia smashed Kai's attacker across the back of his head. This was no ghost. This being was solid enough to stagger under the blow. I know what you are, Torvalia hissed. She clubbed the revenant again, and its fatal grip on Kai faltered. Snarling, it lunged for her, and she flipped the neck of the Les Paul to the ragged end and ran the monster through. The thing that had once been a lead singer loosed unholy cries as Torvalia drove it backward and pinned it to the wall. Get up, Kai! Get up now! She yelled. Kai rolled toward his sister. Maisie lifted her head blearily. Torvalia, spitting obscenities, dodged scything claws as she twisted the makeshift stake deeper. The revenant's cries rose in pitch and intensity till it felt like their ears would bleed. Finally, it stopped. Kai pulled Maisie to her feet, not exactly steady himself. You okay? Maybe? She hugged him and burst into tears. Across the room, Torvalia swept charred detritus from a moldering desk, stabbing pencils, pens, a splintered drumstick, anything she could lay hands onto into the creature's chest, torso, and throat. It sagged against the wall where she'd transfixed it, barely recognizable. How did you know to do that? Kai's voice was ragged. Torvalia hammered a broken chair leg through the third and fourth ribs. She did not turn around. Suicide is one way to come back as a vampire, she said. That's a vampire? Maisie gasped. Is it dead now? Let's not stick around to find out. Yet.
That was so good.
Thank you so much, Em. That was really great. I love the voice. I love the evocation of place, and I love the way it just snowballed at the end. Just really wonderful work. Thank you so much.
And I will mute me now because I want to hear the next one.
So it is our custom here at Story Hour to just take a breath between authors, just to kind of let the work resonate a little bit and ring and sort of cleanse our mental and emotional and spiritual palates. So we're going to do that. I'm going to do that. Y'all can do whatever you want. So I'm going to take a breath. M. Belanger, folks. Thank you, M. Our next author is Nadia Bulkin. She is the author of the short story collection She Said Destroy from Word Horde in 2017, and the forthcoming novella Red Skies in the Morning, Dim Shores, coming out in 2024. Maybe out already.
Yeah, it's actually already
awesome.
Out, so.
Nadia is also the co-editor of the Haunted House anthology, Why Didn't You Just Leave? Cursed Morsels 2024. She's been nominated for the Shirley Jackson Award 5 times for She Said Destroy and 4 of her stories. And in 2024, she won the Bram Stoker Award for her nonfiction essay, Becoming Ungovernable, Lata, Amok, and Disorder in Indonesia. Nadia grew up in Jakarta, Indonesia, with her Javanese father and American mother before relocating to Lincoln, Nebraska. She has 2 political science degrees and lives in Washington, D.C. She is Nadia Bulkin on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Blue Sky. Nadia, welcome back to Story Hour. Take it away.
Thank you. And once again, that was a great story. Yeah, really enjoyed that. Vibes were immaculate, as they say. My story also has a musical title. It's called Heaven or Las Vegas. It is less musical, however, so sorry for the disappointment. But I will do my best to follow that. Mike had left the cash in the back seat. She could always just drive away. She could clamber over the gear shift, get into the driver's seat, crank the steering wheel to the left, and get back onto Highway 21. He'd known that he was leaving her with that option when he left the keys on the front seat of the Honda, when he met her eyes through the windshield and gave her this look like, I hope you don't leave me. But she could leave him. The option was there. Make good choices was his catchphrase, the thing he yelled at aimless teenagers on Friday evenings, but he himself couldn't make a good choice to save his life. That was probably how he'd ended up sitting in a car with her in a suitcase filled with clothes and cash, but no real destination except a vague dream of Las Vegas. It was for sure how he'd ended up getting back out of the car and running back into town for his little sister, even though a small part of her was proud of him for that mistake. Usually all he did about Deborah was worry. These were the types of things that crossed one's mind while sitting in a dark car under a willow tree, waiting for one's lover to return. Kate rechecked her phone. No word from Mike or from Sarah Winchell, the only person she knew in town who she'd wanted to warn. Although the cop who answered the phone when they called said he'd send someone to check on what they called the disturbance, the streets were still completely quiet. It was 12:12, which meant Mike had only been gone 4 minutes. This silence of the world did reassure the outermost layer of her consciousness, like a double wrapping of psychic gauze, like the blankets that she used to pull over her head while her parents were fighting and she had school the next day, like the dollars she'd started skimming off various unaudited funds in the city's budget to distract herself of the fact that her mother was dying in a hospital 20 miles away. It had become a sport to her, that one, a poker game with God. If she could keep finding the money to pay for her mother's treatments, her mother would stay alive. She could shut out the doctor's assessments, her mother's rapidly dropping weight. She'd transfer another $10,000, and that fear, like a fire, would fade. The fear began, this time, as confusion. When she saw the shapes crisscrossing the moon, small enough to be bats at first, even though it wasn't the season, and then suddenly way too large, large enough to be paratroopers, it was like her mind short-circuited. She even started laughing because she didn't know what else to do. It was Mike who reacted like he knew what they were. Don't make a sound, he muttered. So she clapped her hand over her mouth until he looked at her with eyes wider than she'd ever seen them and whispered, they don't make a sound. Quiet streets, silent predators. 4 minutes ago, Mike had said that he would be back in half an hour. 30 minutes, 12:38 a.m. He hadn't provided an alternative. It wasn't, if I'm not back in half an hour, leave without me, or even, if I'm not back in half an hour, come look for me. Being affair partners, they were used to a certain level of ambiguity when it came to future plans. She looked back down at the phone and watched the 2 become a 3, which meant he had 25 minutes left to find Deborah. Mike's first instinct, after they stopped the car on Highway 21 and watched those things fly overhead toward the town that they were trying to leave, was to go back. Mike, she'd hissed, because all she wanted to do was keep driving away, to drive away even faster. But Mike said no one else will get her, and he had a point about that. Kate didn't know Deborah Wallace except by reputation, but that reputation was sick and delicious and had made it to neighboring towns even. It wasn't that anyone else in their sad town had a leg to stand on, really. And if Deborah wasn't a Wallace, she'd just be another sad kid lost to the haze of opiates. But because her father was on the city council and her mother ran the school board and her brother, asshole Richard, was the chief of police and her other brother, Mike, was the school district superintendent, although it was hard to see Mike trying to get away with anything except giving building contracts to his brother-in-law's construction company, people like to have a go at hot mess Deborah. They couldn't have a go at anybody else in that family. What if Deborah wasn't even in town? Kate wanted to ask, because Deborah did know a whole bunch of losers who lived on the other side of Highway 21 by the Circle G motel. But she didn't ask, because it felt like another question might break the soap bubble illusion that they were already struggling to keep from bursting. The idea that they might get out of this all right. And Mike was the one getting out of the car. He was the one that had to swallow his fear. But no, that was wrong. He didn't have to. Fuck his stuck-up family, including Deborah. When they saw those things flying overhead, they called the cops, and that was on those cops, the so-called keepers of the peace, to save the town and everyone in it. God knows they had the ammunition. Assuming that Richard had spent at least some of the budget on the police department instead of his house. As far as Kate was concerned, she and Mike had done their duty. They had been better citizens tonight than they'd been for the past 10 years. But he liked to do this, Mike. He liked to claim to be powerless in the face of greater forces, say that there was nothing that could be done about one's fate. It had taken her months to convince him to pack up and leave Mandy, leave town, to convince him that he did have a choice. And by not leaving, he was choosing to stay. Leaving, starting over, had been her idea. She simply could not tolerate another summer spent in the unrenovated wing of City Hall, in her kitchen avoiding Charlie. And while she and Mike had been planning to start over together, use their combined cash to buy the gas it would take to get to Vegas, rent a hotel room west of the Strip, and keep their past lives anesthetized until their new identities took shape, there was no reason she couldn't start over alone. It would be harder. She'd have to explain herself more. She'd have to watch her back more closely. But she didn't need him to be free, just like she didn't need Charlie to be happy. That didn't mean she had to leave Mike here, but she didn't have to wait for him either. She wanted to check the radio again, see if the nearby stations were coming in any clearer than they had been before those things blocked out the moon, but she was afraid of drawing attention or draining the battery, because she would be driving away tonight, with or without Mike. The truth was, Deborah might already be dead. Those things, what had Mike called them? Night gaunts? He said he saw them in his nightmares. Might have already killed her, somehow. Kate wasn't sure how, since she had no sense of them at all, except to know deep in her heart that they were malignant. She had no idea what Mike thought he was going to do with that pocket knife he grabbed out of the glove compartment. Most of his family would probably be glad anyway if one of those night gaunts did away with Deborah. All the relief of their sticky little burden being gone, with none of the mess of an overdose they'd have to hide. And then who would they have to complain about? Mike? Childless, with an insane wife, and not even very good at taking the kickbacks that kept the town's economy chugging? An extremely bright light bathed the car in a glow, and she had a fleeting fantasy of Mike coming back with a flashlight he found at Deborah, saying he'd run into an army of cops along the way who assured him that they had everything under control. But it wasn't Mike. It was his brother, asshole Richard, whose main contribution to Deborah's life, though it was really more of a kick in the teeth, was giving her the legal green light to buy all the oxy she could want. For the first time in her life, Kate was glad to see Richard. Maybe he knew how to call state troopers. Maybe he could set off some emergency alert, or... Grinning, he asked, "Does Mandy know about this?" Even as recently as an hour ago, she would have panicked at the thought, mostly because Mandy was the type of crazy who might convince herself that any woman Mike was having an affair with was an ancient reptilian demon who deserved to be killed. Alas, Kate no longer had the capacity to care about what Mandy or anybody else knew. All she could think of was how unbelievably loud Richard's voice was. He was making himself a lightning rod for those things. She slammed her finger against her mouth to shush him. She pointed frantically at the sky. All he did was crane his big neck so he could look inside the car. Where the fuck is he anyway? And what the fuck is all that shit in the back seat? You guys going somewhere? She scribbled a garbled message on the back of a gas station receipt and pressed it to the window. Quiet. Danger. Are you high? Get out of the car. She turned the receipt over and tried again. Monsters. Rolling his eyes, Richard tried the door handle. Her heart glumped in her chest before the handle made an empty click, and Richard frowned, and she remembered that she'd locked all the doors manually. Thank God. Get out of the car, he said, or I will shoot the window out. Seriously, don't try me. And then the darkness that had been the night suddenly wrapped itself around him, and after a brief and disturbingly quiet struggle, punctuated only by Richard's muffled grunts, Richard disappeared. Correction, he fell. She knew he fell because she heard his body thud. Kate immediately, instinctively, tried to slide into the Honda's footwell. She wasn't sure why. Muscle memory from an active shooter training, probably. Run, hide, fight, and for whatever stupid reason she ruled out run. After a few minutes, she peeked out the window. Richard was 10 feet away, belly down, but neck twisted, toward her. The sight was so awful that she averted her eyes and saw one of those things on top of him. It didn't have a face. That was what struck her the hardest. Where it should have had some kind of eyes, some kind of teeth, It had only a blank slab, slick as a dolphin's underbelly. Kate's hands flew to her own face, and for a moment she thought her own mouth was gone, her own nose a plateau. Because while Mike was apparently dreaming about silent flying monsters, she'd been dreaming about missing faces. Her father sitting faceless in an idling car, her mother lying faceless in her open casket as the rest of the town cooed over how beautiful she looked. She'd be lying if she said Mike was the first or only person in this town to see her face, to see her as something other than the accounting woman at City Hall or Charlie's nagging wife. She wasn't some idiot schoolgirl. Mike had not saved her. He had not brought her to life. And she still didn't have a face, not really. But there was something on her skull now, a stubborn Play-Doh nose, skeptical beady eyes that gazed longingly down Highway 21. That thing on top of Richard would never grow a face. It had killed Richard, but would never eat him. It could fly all the way to Las Vegas and never see its lights. She felt a silhouette of pity. 12:38 passed, and there was no sign of Mike. No reply from Sarah Winchell. The thing that killed Richard had flown away to join its kindred in laying siege to the town. She knew the night gaunts were winning because she'd hear human shrieks, gunshots, glass breaking. She didn't hear a lot of tires squealing. She didn't see any sirens. She thought she heard a scream from a nearby street. It wasn't Mike's voice. It sounded a bit like Mayor Plummer, caught unawares coming out of the corner store strip club, maybe? A lump in her throat reminded her that she was only wondering whose voice it was to keep herself from thinking about what was being done to the screamer. She kept typing and then deleting a text to Mike. It's not your fault, or it's not our fault, or this has nothing to do with us. It wasn't that she wanted anyone in the town to die. Anyone else, rather, since Richard was definitely dead. She didn't wish death upon Deborah, or Mandy, or Mayor Plummer. She didn't even wish death upon Charlie, no matter how many times he had drunkenly done the same to her. She certainly wanted only the best little life of Sarah Winchell, who'd unwittingly served as her alibi while sharing an office with her for the past 5 years, and her neighbor, poor old Ernie Ward, who played her opera music in an empty house. It was just that it had taken her so long to prioritize her own life that the thought of putting the town above it made her entire body tense up. Not just tense up, shut up, shut down. Flip a coin, Mike would say if he was here. Sometimes it was the only way they could make a decision. So she dug a penny out of the cup holder. Heads, she'd drive away. Tails, she'd stay. It was tails. Several knots in her body loosened. That felt like the right decision. Imagine if Mike came back and found both her and his car gone, and only his brother in the dirt. His, hers, theirs. If Mike was here, he would surely tell her that Deborah was his problem, not hers. But how was she supposed to square that with the fact that he'd said the cash in the back was theirs, even though most of it was technically his? Almost all the money she'd taken from the city's development funds had gone straight into the St. Anne's Memorial Hospital coffers, while Mike had barely known what to do with his contract kickbacks. Some unsuccessful rehab for Deborah, Mandy's trip to a Patriot convention. He blew through a little at the Twin Rivers casinos, but the rest was sitting in that suitcase. Why do you take the money at all? Kate had asked him when they first started sitting in his Honda at the edge of town at the end of last year. They just gave it to me, was his reply. At any rate, if they were sharing that money and this car, then Deborah was at least a little bit Kate's problem too. But there was another choice, wasn't there? Much as she didn't like to admit it, there was another choice to make. She'd place the coin on her hand again. Heads, she'd go search for Mike. Tails, she'd stay where she was. It was heads. Kate exhaled like she was blowing out a birthday candle. Okay, go. She was going to go. She clambered into the driver's seat, snatching up the keys as she climbed over the console. She buckled her seatbelt. She texted Mike, "I'm coming to get you. Where are you?" And then she paused, eyes firmly on the cloudy sky, the partially obscured waning moon. She waited, finger twitching, until the silence was broken by someone else's distant screaming and the yelp of a car alarm to start the Honda's engine. The power of the car beneath her made her think about other options, even though she was barely going above 5 miles an hour. like staying on this road until she got to D Street, driving to her own house, checking on Charlie. Oh, Charlie. She suspected that he might have known something was in motion. Her leaving town, that is, not the night gone swooping in. You know, my mother always says this about you. He'd taken to saying quite a lot, and she'd think, oh, great, here we go. Says you're a flake. Says you can't commit. Says I never should have married you. His mother was a witch who liked to wear the air of civic responsibility like an easily shaken off cloak, but Kate had to admit her instincts weren't usually wrong. She could read people. Knows how she kept getting reelected to city council. She knew who would be willing to pay for what. At this point, she and Charlie would probably push each other over a bridge if someone offered them $100. In her head, she wished him the best. And there was still no word from Mike. But there could be any reason for that. It didn't have to be the worst one. She closed the curtains on the parts of her brain that were the most prone to worrying. It's fine. You're fine. Everything's fine. And rolled the car toward the decrepit Baptist church that Deborah lived next to. She proceeded down Fifth Street slowly, looking for flickers of shadows or light. And then she saw him, Mike, in the middle of the road. He was dragging Deborah, who was draped limply over his shoulder, her sneakered feet barely curling to help her walk. When he saw the car, he whispered something to Deborah, a soft, come on, probably. Kate sighed, relieved. She allowed herself the luxury of being irritated with Deborah, of wondering how long they need to babysit her before they could make their escape. And then Deborah slipped. Mike buckled, trying to catch her. Kate hit the brake, put the car into park, and raced out, slamming the door because Mike had a bit of a bum knee, and she had seen that drop of Deborah's a dozen times from Charlie, and getting him up to bed always took twice as long if he hit the ground before anyone got to him, and they didn't have time. Just before she reached them, Mike looked at her with the most awful, twisted expression on his face, like he was in pain, like he was in shock. But before she could ask him if he was injured, he yelled, Kate! Kate rushed her finger to her lips before realizing that he was not, in fact, looking at her. He was looking past her, above her, behind her, to the silent, faceless night beyond. The end.
Oh man, thank you so much, Nadia. Boy, what a night, Laura.
Oh my goodness.
Very wonderful close to Spooky Month. Nadia Bulkin and Belanger, thank you so much for bringing your work and sharing with us here at Story Hour, with everybody out there listening. Want to thank my co-host, Laura Blackwell. Thanks, Laura. And
Thanks for
the
having me,
authors,
Dan.
Belanger, Nadia Bulkin, and also, of course, all of you for coming back every week and sharing Story Hour with us, sharing the fictive dream. Next week, we have, it's going to be a great night just from a fiction standpoint, but we also have an interesting name anomaly. We have Barbara Barnett and Barbara A. Barnett. They are not the same person. They are different people and different writers. And
And
we'll
the
both,
world had to know, Daniel. The
the world
world
had to
had
know.
to
The
know.
world had to know. Absolutely.
That's right.
Um,
Yes, there's the one
oh,
with the auburn hair and the one with the fabulous hats. And now everyone will know.
absolutely. So come on back. We'll see you all next week. And happy Halloween. And don't forget to vote if you haven't already. And we'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.
That was fun.
That was great.